Hi, my name is Ken Dinkins. I'm the Executive Director of Helping Hands, and this is Susan Hall. For those of you that are watching this, the main purpose is for our donors to hear and to see about some of the fruit that's produced with Helping Hands. And with Susan, God's been just doing so much in her life. It's kind of hard to, typically we put it down in paper form, and it's just hard to capture just how wonderful God is and the things that He'll do to restore and to rebuild people's lives and to build better lives. Helping Hands motto is to help others build new and better lives. And we've seen God do that in Susan's life, not just because of Helping Hands. He was working in her life before she came, and He continues to. And she's just a lot of doors have been opened for her recently. There's a saying that God will take your mess and turn it into a message. And, to speak loosely, God's taken Susan's mess and He's given her a message of restoration. And you'll probably hear her use the term lived experience and so forth. And so she's in a position to take what God's done in her life and to share it with others and put other people on the same path. And so I've asked her to share a little bit about that. But before, in order to appreciate where she is now, and to create a little context and understanding, she's just going to start off. Can you just share a little bit about, what brought you to Helping Hands? A little bit of your past that brought you to Helping Hands and so forth, and then I guess just take it from there to what God's been doing in the last 6 months or so. Really a lot of neat stuff. Do you mind doing that?
I don't mind at all. I'm actually really excited to share God's story, His glory, the transforming power that He's had in my life. Yeah. So I would be a person that struggled with substance use for roughly 20 years. And it would usually, later on I would learn it would come from adverse childhood experiences, traumas in my childhood. But I wouldn't know that until I was an adult. So I would go through all of this years of substance use, and I would have some children. I would be in a domestic relationship, domestic violence. My children would be removed from me and put into foster care. And I would go into a treatment center knowing that if I didn't do something now, I would lose my children forever. I would be in that treatment center. I would be learning about trauma. I would be healing. I would be finding something new I'd never felt before. I had a relationship with Jesus, and that was my number one priority, is getting right with God while I was in treatment. I was like, there is no distractions. I can build my relationship back with God, and I can just get back where I know I need God first, right? I learned that God first, my sobriety next, and all things will be added to me. Yes, I can never put anything before that or I lose it, that's right? Good. So as I'm in this journey of self-discovery in this treatment center, my twins are in a foster care home. COVID had just started, so everyone was on lockdown. I was only seeing them virtually. And I was about 4 days away from coming home to be back with my children. And I would be told one of my children died in that foster home. And it would be later determined she died from neglect in that foster home from environmental factors. And my other twin daughter was hospitalized from that very same foster home, the trauma she went through. I would get out of there and I would be devastated. I would be trying to live a life of recovery. I would not know how to do any of it, manage grief, recovery, anything. And God would place me in a place where He knew that I needed people. The foster family that had my living twin went to a church, and they told me I could only see her if I went to that church. And I would sneak in and out the back door because I was so filled with shame and guilt. My daughter passed away in a foster home because I was in treatment trying to get sober. And that would probably become one of my greatest strengths, is using her memory to bring honor to her memory, right? Like, she died so I could learn to live a sober life. So I must do something with my life, right? I must bring honor to the fact that she lost her life while I was learning how to live sober. So that church would come around me. They would support me. They would take me through this healing journey like I have never experienced in my entire life. I would fight a fierce DCF case battle for about almost 2 years. And during that 2 years, I would be exhausted. Some days I was like, I can't do this anymore. I can't fight anymore. I'm so tired. And those church people, God placed them in my life, and they would just say, you're going to fight. Like, those are your kids. You're not going to give up no matter what people say. I had a horrible team of professionals, DCF workers and guardian ad litems, that told me I would never get my kids back. There was nothing that I could ever do to ever get my children back. And I kept following God. God said, Susan, you are doing everything in your life right for the first time in your life, right? You are serving me every day. You are spending time with me every single day. You are not lashing back at these people that are making these allegations against you. You are not being nasty. You are not living in the ways of the world. Follow me anyways. And I couldn't understand in those moments. I was like, God, how can I be doing everything right and all these horrible things still be happening to me? Like, I didn't comprehend it, right?
Yeah.
And he would take me through this journey. And in those moments, when I look back, he was teaching me the most important lessons that I would ever need to have my entire life. And in those moments, you don't feel like it, you don't understand it, but he is working. He is working all of those things out for the good of those who love him. And now it's absolutely manifesting in my life, right? Like, I am seeing the living manifestation of him working the most horriblest times of my life out. I mean, those were the most traumatizing, horriblest things I've ever experienced in my life. And he's using them for his glory. Like, how is that even possible?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's when you wrap your mind around the entire thing, you're like, how can this happen? Right. And so this would take place. I would work, and he would annihilate my enemies, basically, right? Because I didn't lash back. I didn't say nasty things. I kept following him and saying, listen, I am not the person these people are saying. I am a new creation. I have been healed. I am a mother. I am all these things, right? And this church family, all these people would walk alongside me, and those guardian ad litems and those caseworkers would end up losing their jobs. They would get fired. They would have to resign. And I would be one of the lucky moms that actually was reunited with their kids. Some of those parents that had those same professionals on their case did not ever get their kids back, right? They signed away their rights. They listened to what they said. Oh, you can never have your kids. Okay, I'll sign my rights away. They didn't have the support that I had, the people that were pouring the love of Jesus in my life. And I'm forever grateful. So I would have my kids back for a short time, and it would be like a dream, right? And one of the kids' fathers would get out of jail. I hadn't had contact with him in well over a year and a half, probably. He would get out of jail, and he would break in my house, and he would do all these things, and he would jeopardize what I had worked so hard for. And all I want to do is serve Jesus with all my heart, mind, body, and soul. And that means saving myself and being pure for the Lord, right? Until God has ordained something different. And so I would not be used to reaching out for help, right? And telling people what is going on. Like, listen, this man is trying to keep me in bondage. He's trying to force me to have these visits with him. He's trying to do all these things. And I would go outside my comfort zone, right? It is uncomfortable. That's another thing that's so important is change is so uncomfortable. Everything that is like the exact opposite of what you did in your past life is what you have to do now. So I would reach out to my Celebrate Recovery pastors. I would let them know what was happening to me, and they would come in like a swarm in, and they would take me out of my home with all my reunited children into their home, and they would say, you're going to find somewhere else to go. So you do not have to let him come in and destroy what you've worked so hard to build. And God would have planned all of it. I would be like searching for about 3 days for anywhere. I was like, I will go to a domestic violence shelter. I will start over. I had my own house. I had all my own things that I had worked to be reunited with my kids. And I wanted to leave all of it just so I could get my kids away, be safe, and not let him jeopardize our lives, right? And I would go to the Women's Pregnancy Center. One of the ladies I know that works there knew Joyce, and she was the director here at Helping Hands. And she would call her, and I would be sitting in the parking lot across at Cascades calling all of these numbers that people were giving me. And she would say, you have an interview, go right now. And I'm like, where am I going? And she's like, Dinkins Realty. And I'm like, across the parking lot from it. And I'm like, what? I can be there in 5 minutes. And so that's how God provided for me. And that moment too, I couldn't see, right? Like, I'm like, God, I have to leave my house I worked so hard for. I have to leave my job that I've had for the whole recovery, right? Leave all those things so that way he can't locate me, he can't find me, and start over in Ocala. Like, but God knew. He knew what was best for me in those moments, and I have learned to accept what he says, right? Like, if he's like, you're going to change everything in your life because I say so, I'm like, yes, okay, God, you got me. I'm with you. I know now from these experiences that you are providing and you are ordaining something that I can't even comprehend. So I've been at Helping Hands for a little bit over 2 years now, and God is just truly on the move. So yeah.
So that's, the beauty of testimony, like what you're given, is it's both instructional and informational, inspirational and instructional. And so there's times I wanted to interrupt you and just let you expand.
You should have interrupted me.
We have to be sensitive to time, but there's just so many good things that you said there that that could be a source of hope and instruction for other people that are facing situations that you have faced. But one of them is just the importance of community. And so you had your church community, and then you came to Helping Hands, and now you had two communities that were supporting you, and that's so important. You know, the Bible teaches us that we rise and fall with the company we keep. You know, one of the things that residents here around here is 2 Timothy 2:22, flee youthful lust. How? By pursuing righteousness, faith, and love with those who call on the Lord out of a pure heart. And so your church, Helping Hands, provides that community and so forth. You know, we're transitional housing. So, you know, you were talking about, you know, where you've been and where you're going and where you are. You know, so one of the things that Helping Hands has allowed for you to do is to live affordable below the living costs to give you the time to concentrate on certain things, you know, in building into your life. Are there any of those things that you would pinpoint or give specifics to as far as what the time here has allowed you to do?
Yes. So it was perfect timing, God ordained timing. So I was getting ready to enroll in college. So I moved in here in July. The end of July, I was starting college. 2 weeks later, I had to leave my job, so that way he couldn't track me through my job. So I didn't have an immediate employment. I had the promise that I could get a job at our local recovery community organization, 0 Hour Life Center, but I had to wait, right? So I was like diligently pursuing this career at this organization that I desperately wanted. And I was enrolling in college at the same time, right? And I just had gotten all my kids and we moved into Helping Hands, right? I was enrolling them in school. It took me 2 months to get into this new position and this career that I was going for. And it took enrolling in college. And so I was able to manage my low rent with the school money that I was getting, right? To keep me on track. And I would have never been able to do that at any other way, right? Before I came to Helping Hands, all my money was like, every cent was spent on bills and stuff to provide for my family. And this was just like a refreshing air coming in, right? Giving me that time to get back on my feet and stabilize. So I'm forever grateful. Thank you.
And what about like our weekly Bible study meetings, just the neighbors that you have? Did you find that as a source of strength or comfort or support? Yes.
So when you come into a transitional housing place, there will be people that have been there for longer than you, and so their spiritual walk is a lot stronger than yours, and so you look at them and you're like, oh, I can't wait to have what they have one day, right? So you inspire to be where they are, right? And then you also connect with the ones that are there to help you, because they understand. They remember coming into that transitional housing that day and how lost and empty and scared that you feel, and they relate to you and they just love. And I'm super blessed. My neighbors now, we are on a TBRI, trust-based relational intervention journey for ourselves and our kiddos, and we're doing it together. I think 4 of us from our apartment complex were at a cookout on Sunday at a different church that we don't normally attend to help our kiddos, right? And so it's amazing to be able to go out in the community and have all of these women there with you, supporting our families and our children and stuff. So.
Or helping each other get your kids to karate.
Karate. We have them in karate. I mean, it's just been an amazing journey. So.
And so you're now at a place where when residents come in, there's extreme need, and then what we look for is progression. Are you progressing? Are you getting those things checked off, spirit, soul, and body, that you need? And then progressively they get to a place of where they can save and where they're contributing more to the community. So that's where you're at now. You're at a position of being in you mentioned the other people before you, but you're at a position of being a good example. You're in a position of being able to save and be, so that you can step out to be independent, and so forth. So let's circle back around and just can you share some of the good news of like the last 6 months as far as the opportunities that you've had to share in front of judges and lawyers, the opportunity you had for, you may want to talk about your record, that stuff, and just where you're going from here and how you're able to touch other people's lives.
So what I had previously stated about God using our junk, right, our worst moments in life and using them for His glory is what I'm experiencing now. So I would be, during the last 6 months, a lot has happened. I would be invited to Orlando to speak for an all sites meeting
2 months ago.
Okay, yes. In the last 6 months, a lot has happened in my life. It all started when I was invited to go to Orlando to speak on stage for the all sites meeting for all dependency courts and early childhood courts. And what that is it's a program that I would be a graduate from. I would be the first person in Marion County, the first parent, to go through the program with a substance use disorder and successfully complete it and be reunited with my children.
All right, I was again trying to not to interrupt, but can you, in a sense, with the way that God moved in your life and the restoration of your own children and the way you advocated for yourself, you kind of broke the mold as far as what, I don't know, is that local or statewide as far as what DCF did? They basically said, because of Susan, we need to look at this 2-year limit window or something. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah. So a parent that suffers from substance use disorder, they have a year to complete the case plan, just like everyone else. 1 year from the moment the children are removed till the moment that they have to be reunited with the parent back in the home. And so it took me longer than that, right? It took me extreme amounts, like 2.5 years. The very first year of it, I barely completed any of it. Once I got out of treatment, I was completely all in it. But a parent that has, no, not just a parent that has substance use, but a lot of times we don't know the skills. We don't know how to complete all the things. We don't know how to get stable housing, a job, complete all these tasks. We don't have a car. We don't have a phone. We don't have a license. We don't have any of those things. And
the
so,
Helping Hands, just I interrupt. The Helping Hands helps people with.
Helps them with. I've seen women come in here without licenses, without car. I mean, without jobs, without careers, without ever having any of those things, and God restoring all of those things for them, right? And just like it's so amazing to sit there and watch and say, oh, I remember when she came in here, she was scared to death, right? And then now she's never had a license, never driven before. Now she's got a car, a license, and it's just amazing when you see God work in other people's lives too.
But in other words, you didn't have anybody walk you through all those steps.
Nobody.
And you needed more time.
Yes.
And you actually had caseworkers saying you aren't going to get that. It's not going to happen. You're not going to get your kids back.
That's exactly right. And there was nobody. I would spend hours online trying to find any kind of organization that would advocate for the parent, that would teach me how to do any of these things, anything like that. And there was nothing. Now the whole nation is different. There is some amazing things happening in the world, right? Well, in our nation, and that is lived experience. So they're making a movement, and that is to include lived experience in all areas. Because who better to help people understand the child welfare system than a parent that had to go through it, right? To say, listen, this did not work for me. You have to do something different, right? They have the same case plan for everyone, right? And each person has their own individual trauma, their individual needs, and they have to ask us. They have to say, listen, where can we help you? Like, what do you feel like your need is? And so they're training these professionals, and it is so moving in my heart to see what is happening, because I had this horrible set of professionals and the worst experience you could have with the dependency system, right? Losing a child and dealing with all of that. And seeing a group of professionals training a statewide staffing agency, right? So all across the state, every circuit court had their judges and lawyers, guardian ad litems, caseworkers. All of these people go to an all sites meeting, and they had a national organization called 0 to 3. And that organization is the one that created a specialty program, right? So we have regular dependency court, then we have this specialty court, right? And this specialty court is about the parent. And so I would be that first parent in Marion County in that specialty court. And so everything was different. When I went in there, they asked me, what can I do? The judge, the magistrate, right?
Who's they?
The magistrate. Like these professionals before that wouldn't even talk to me for a second. I'm in this court hearing, and the judge is like, what can I do to help you? And I was like, did he ask me to talk? Because I've never had a voice before. Like, no one would listen to me. And this judge wants me to answer him directly. What can he do to help me? And I had been advocating the whole time for a set of unbiased professionals to come in and review my case. I said, I want one chance, and that chance is new professionals that aren't biased against me, that don't know anything about my case, to come in, review me as a mother, and then make a determination. And he says, I'm going to give you that. I'm going to give you that one chance. I had a case manager that was my supervisor, and I went into her office, and they had told her, this mother is, she's been had this case plan for so long, and
In and out.
And that same case manager supervisor would just testify for me in a court hearing against DCF for my criminal history. I would be going for a statewide certification, and because I have a criminal record, I can't.
So now we're talking about two different things. We're talking about the symposium and the you took your experience and you testified between before judges and lawyers
Yes.
about your experience. And then so we're kind of going back and forth. And then you because of what you feel God's put on your heart to do in the future, you needed your criminal record in the eyes of DCF,
Yes.
cleared and so forth. And so that case worker testified for you. And so she had a hearing before a judge and about 13 people that would witness of her character and the consistency and so forth. So how can we tie this back around to make sense for the viewer? So go back to the living experience portion of.
So it really, in all actuality, they really are intertwined, right?
Yeah.
So the same professionals that came in my case when I got that chance are the same professionals that I work alongside of now, right? So they were the ones that gave me the chance, the one that gave me the fair opportunity, and they're the ones that, because of the way I continued to live my life and lead by example, would invite me to speak on stage at this event in Orlando to all these judges and lawyers. And I would there would be 3 of us, peers across the state, that were invited to speak on lived experience and the importance of it.
Yeah.
And my organization that I work for provides the local peer supports for our community. So I would go on stage, I would speak, I would share about my lived experience through DCF, and I would use that time to advocate. I would use that time to tell the Gaudium and Lidums and the caseworkers and the people in the audience how I was treated, right? So they were aware. A lot of times they get jaded in that field, right? And a lot of times, a lot of parents don't do the right things and they don't do the work and they don't get their kids back. And so it's hard for them to give those parents that are willing to do the work a fair opportunity.
Right.
So I was able to use my lived experience in that situation and talk to all of these people. And because of that national organization 0 to 3 would invite me to Boston, Massachusetts to the national statewide convention. So I would fly to Boston, Massachusetts, and I would be there with a group of parent partners from across the nation. And what they are parents just like me, but some of them are like the pioneers in the field. They've been doing this like since before we ever knew anything like this ever could even exist. And they're all doing amazing work in their own unique ways. So some of them are advocating for change at like national levels, like policy changes at Washington, D.C. And some of them are like in Nevada, some of them are in Hawaii, and they're all over. And so I would sit in a room with these women and look around and be like, oh my God, you're so good. Like, what are you going to take me after this? Because this is amazing.
Right.
And he would have a plan. He would say, I'm going to take you somewhere else, Susan, hold on. I would come home from Boston and just be like super empowered.
I got to interrupt you. Hopefully, just hold your thought because I'm just making connections because for us, we homeschooled and we had a beautiful homeschool experience. But 70s, 80s, or whatever you mentioned. I don't know if you use the word pioneers, but there had to be these standalone parents that had to advocate for their right to homeschool and to be accepted and not to be looked at these crazy stereotypes and stuff. And so because they put in the time and the sacrifice and were willing to whatever, now the homeschool in the nation is just so much easier, so much more doable, less frowned upon and stuff. So I'm just thinking about that with you and who you're mentioning. You guys are pioneering and making a way for better advocacy and better outcomes for families and children. So anyways, I'm just reflecting and enjoying that.
No,
connection.
Absolutely. And that's like part of my motto is that when I do some of these different things like advocating and the exemption process and the different things that I've been doing and done, it's because I'm not just doing it for me. I'm advocating for all the parents that will come after me, all the people that might not have had the supports I had, might not have the knowledge that I've been blessed enough to be able to do these things, right? I mean, I've gotten myself a lot of places that I didn't realize how qualified I was to get there until I was sitting there and they're like, how did you get here? And I'm like, well, I worked really hard,
You worked really hard, and you did. I watched some of when she was in Orlando. I watched some of it, and she did a very good job with stage presence and presenting herself in an understandable way. So you are qualified.
Yes, and so I'll see if this is a good time to tie in that exemption process.
Yes, because we'll need to wrap it up.
Okay,
good.
So the exemption process would be so I could pass a level 2 background check to work with vulnerable adults and to start with adolescents. So my heart is for young children. Vulnerable adults and adolescents. Different. They're considered 2 different spectrums. So I could vulnerable adults is like one portion, but to get the adolescence was the real reason I went to the trial for. And I would win. They would DCF would excuse my criminal history and tell me that they would allow me to be certified to the state of Florida to be a peer support specialist and to use my lived experience to help change up lives for the people coming after me. So there's the opportunity and the open door was there for you to walk through to do these things and to do what God's put in your heart. But you had the criminal history that prevented you. So she was now in another case, just like when she advocated to get her children back. She did a lot of self-teaching, a lot of self-advocating because she needed legal help, legal experience. Is she going to do this alone? Is she going to do it with other lawyers? And God worked that out and so forth. Again, I don't know how I got to that point where I interrupted you, but you're advocating for yourself. And so go ahead and doors were open, but you couldn't walk through them because of the criminal history. Yeah. So you did the first step to get expunged is not the right word or whatever, but you applied for it and you were denied. I was denied.
She went through the first step legal system and you actually kind of created, not very many people do this, what you did.
Right.
And so she actually, again, worked hard to do what she's about to explain.
Yeah. So I initially applied for the exemption and I was denied because they said I did not have enough rehabilitation. So because I had stayed connected with all of the people my whole journey, all the way back to my very first therapist, my very first treatment center, all the way through, I was able to call every one of those professional witnesses to my case, and they all testified to the rehabilitation they've seen in my life. And it was only God. I sat in there and I cried over and over and over again while I was hearing people tell my story. My story was told through the lips of everyone else, and I just sat there, and in the end, God knew, he just annihilated. DCF, the lawyer that was against me, said, you know what, we want to do whatever we can to help you continue to shine, and we're going to grant you an immediate exemption right now. We're going to give you, you're going to be able to work with youth for a year virtually, and after that year, it will fall off and you can work in person with them. And it was God.
It was. I got it for perspective. So whatever the date was, you remember the date? September or
August 26th.
That we had So the day before they call DCF calls you and wants to do what's the word? The compromise.
They want to do they have a plea offer. They want to give you a deal.
And she's like, no, I'm going all the way in. I'm all the way in for this. And so. She had was it 13 witnesses? It was a Zoom courtroom, and she mentioned, her past therapists, caseworkers. Imagine your pastor's wife was on there.
Pastor's wife, healing teachers.
I was in there, and so at the end, this DCA lawyer was like, we're thinking, okay, we're gonna have to wait a few days to hear back from them. Are they going to counter? And he's like, man, we can't stop this thing. What God, he didn't say God, but what she's been set up to do, we got to go with this. And so she had people in her life that were able to testify. And just as far as Helping Hands concerned, I was just thinking about when you're talking is just. So I was able to testify, but of the consistency and stuff. But one of the things I'm thinking of is I didn't even plan on it, but I talked about the fact that we have security cameras, and I was trying to make the point that she's got all these kids. She's got a young one. She's got 4 kids that she's responsible for, and she just I've never seen her lose her cool. And one time I was on the security cameras, and I'm just like, she's loading her kids in the car, and I'm like, oh my goodness, she has to do this every day, load these cars, or whatever. And the reason I say that is because, with Helping Hands, the operation Helping Hands, we're talking about the big fruit, but there's even just the little things that our supporters help us in, or people that don't even realize that we have security cameras, because we have to create security, a sense of security for our residents and so forth, and just little things like that. But just the fact that, again, I didn't plan it, but I just thought it carried a heavy point to or whatever, and so forth. So so he just pretty much right after the meeting, he contacted the judge.
Asked the judge to excuse himself from the courtroom, his own courtroom, so they could have a private conversation with me to tell me that they didn't want the judge to even rule on the case, because they wanted to change their decision before he had a chance to overrule them, because the judge could overrule their decision. That's why I went in front of the judge. And they didn't even want him to rule. Right. They said, we want to change it voluntarily. And so that was just
And so what we're kind of talking about is her time with 0 Hour has really been instrumental in preparing her to do. So she came to Helping Hands with a vision in her heart to help youth that have suffered from substance abuse in a school type setting and so forth. And so along the way, she's like, so what she was just talking about with the criminal record, that this is allowing her to walk out what God's put in her heart from years ago.
Yeah.
And so forth. And, we're just thankful of Helping Hands to have a role in that, to witness it, to support you in it, and so forth. So I can't see the timer. No telling how long this has been.
I don't know, but there is one more thing.
Please.
One more thing that I want to tell you that has been happening in the last 6 months. So we have a federally mandated statewide dependency court improvement panel in the state of Florida. And it's through the Office of the State Court Administrators, and so they would reach out to me and they would invite me to sit on their panel as the only parent with lived experience in the state of Florida to make changes to the dependency court system. So I went to my first meeting last month and heard these professionals from across the state making changes in the child welfare system, starting with the judges. The judges talking about relinquishing their power when they're speaking to these parents that come into the initial court settings so they can understand what's going on. Right? And hearing multiple judges talking in this private meeting about how they know there's a power differential and how they're willing to set that aside to communicate to this parent so they can understand. This could alter the whole course of that case plan for that parent, because I'm willing to relate to you on a human level about what's happening in your life. And to hear them do that and be able to bring my own lived experience and everything that I've went through to help change it for other people is just, it's the fruit of God, right? It's like when he says, I will work all things, continue to serve me when things do not look good. When you can't understand it, when they're not going any way you planned, continue to serve me, because in the end, it will all work out the way I planned. And I just see it. I'm just amazed every day of my life when I see it manifesting in my life.
Yeah. And that's His promise, to be faithful. He's a rewarder of those who diligently seek Him. Seek first the kingdom of God, and that's good. And your life is such a testimony to that. I'll try to go one in closing. If you can't think of anything off the top of your head, that's fine. But just we've talked about you, but again, going back to your neighbors, some other people. What are some other things that you've seen with your neighbors that point to the fruit of Helping Hands or the strength of Helping Hands or anything like that? Is there anything you can mention?
Yeah, I'll make it short because I know we're trying to, but there is quite a few different things. So when you asked that question, I thought of the different stages that these women go through. So a lot of times they come in and they do not have a relationship with God, or they don't know Him on that kind of level, and it grows them spiritually, right? Then second of all, they come in and most of them do not have the children right away, or they're working on the reunification, or they only have visitations on the weekends, or whatever that looks like. And I have seen families reunited in Helping Hands. I have seen women that probably were in abusive and domestic relationships that were bad, set free from those and finding career paths, pursuing dreams and visions that they may have had in their lives before all that trauma happened, before all those things happened, seeing them actually fulfilling those things in their lives and growing and coming to the women's Bible study and talking about, this is what God's doing in my house for me and for my children, right? This is what's happening. And I've seen the children bloom and grow because they come in and they've had all this rupture and all of this chaos in their life, and they get stability, right? And they get to feel comfortable. They get to come in and know when they see Ken and they see the other people at the Bible study for the children, hug them, love to go. And it's such an honor and a privilege to be a part of a community like that, where the parents and the children can grow, and the love and support from everyone, Dinkins and all of the staff and the people that just wrap us around with their love. So very good. And I'll close with, because you touched on something that a vision and the means that's expanding with Helping Hands, and I use the term rescuing destinies and building legacies, and that's what we're doing. We're taking Susan, an example, the childhood history that you had in the course of life that you started with. Your kids are not going to go through that. Amen. Thank you, Jesus. And that's important. That is the most important thing. That is the number one thing that is most important, is we break that, right? And those children grow up and they know who? Jesus, right? And is their Lord and their Savior and their God, and they get that instilled in them from the time they're this big and this big when they start until forevermore. Yes. Thank you for finishing for me, because I wouldn't have got through it.
Thank you. I'll stop there. So thank you very much, Susan. I hope this is a blessing to you. That again, like testimony that is both informational and inspirational, and that what God will do for you, He'll do for others.
Yeah. And I want to thank everyone, all the donors, and everyone out there that has made it possible for my life, my children's life, and all the other women at Helping Hands. Thank you very much.